Donald Trump threatened to take control of the Panama Canal, repeatedly accusing China of having control over it.
And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
You've heard about the Panama Canal before, but what if we told you that this colossal waterway is on the brink of collapse, not just due to drought, but a global power struggle that involves the world's most powerful forces?
Stretching just 80 kilometers, the Panama Canal is one of the most critical arteries of global trade, handling over 14,000 ships annually, more than 5% of the world's maritime commerce. Notably, over 70% of this traffic is tied to U.S. ports. But in early 2025, Donald Trump shook the geopolitical landscape by announcing his plan to take back control of the canal.
To further enhance our national security, my administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal, and we've already started doing it. Just today, a large American company announced they are buying both ports around the Panama Canal and lots of other things having to do with the Panama Canal and a couple of other canals. The Panama Canal was built by Americans for Americans, not for others, but others could use it.
So why does the U.S. want back in? What does China stand to lose? And how will Panama navigate this high-stakes battle between two superpowers? During a campaign rally, Trump declared his intention to reclaim control of the Panama Canal, arguing that U.S. ships were being unfairly charged high fees and that the nation was losing billions on the very route it built. He directly blamed C.K. Hutchison Holdings, a Hong Kong-based conglomerate that operates strategic ports at both ends of the canal, Balboa on the Pacific and Cristobal on the Atlantic. According to Trump, this situation threatens America's trade security and national defense. But beyond fiery speeches, an internal government document, described as a provisional national security guide, revealed something even more serious. The Pentagon had been instructed to explore all options for securing long-term U.S. access to the canal, including military cooperation, technical assistance, and economic influence. Panama wasted no time in responding. The Foreign Ministry issued a firm statement. The Panama Canal is a national asset. It belongs to the Panamanian people and will remain that way. Yet within weeks, Panama made bold moves that signaled a dramatic shift in its foreign and economic policies. First, Panama withdrew from China's Belt and Road Initiative, a global infrastructure program it had joined in 2017.
Its participation in Beijing's global infrastructure plan expire. Calling the move a regrettable decision, the ambassador said that the Belt and Road Initiative is an economic initiative and not a political one. He also accused the US and other Western countries of a totally groundless smear campaign over the plan.
The purpose is to build up a platform for countries, especially the Global South, to have economic cooperation with each other. So it has nothing to do with any political agenda. So and the economic cooperation is mutually beneficial. So we do hope that country would see this in the proper light, and the smear campaign that is launched by the U.S. and some of the other Western countries on the Belt and Road Initiative is totally groundless.
Then the Attorney General canceled C.K. Hutchison Holdings' long-standing port concession agreement, which had originally been signed in 1997 and renewed in 2021 for another 25 years. Following the cancellation of C.K. Hutchison's deal, a new player quickly entered the scene. BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager. The U.S. investment giant announced that it had secured a $22.8 billion deal to take over port operations.
Giant U.S. asset manager BlackRock is backing a takeover of Panama Canal ports operated by Hong Kong firm C.K. Hutchison. The deal announced Tuesday is valued at $22.8 billion and also includes dozens of ports in other countries. It appears to be a win for US President Donald Trump's aggressive diplomacy. He has vowed to wrest control of the canal, falsely claiming that it is being run by China.
China's involved with the Panama Canal. They won't be for long.
Trump has cited the presence of Chinese companies as evidence, with Washington pointing to C.K. Hutchison's role as a security risk. The US president has refused to rule out military action over the matter. Now the new deal will give the BlackRock-led consortium a 90% stake in Panama Ports Company, which has operated ports on the canal for more than 20 years. A Reuters source says BlackRock, the world's largest asset management firm, has briefed the White House on the move. One expert called the sale a huge win for the US and said it should calm tensions over the canal.
Panama's government insisted that this was a purely commercial transaction with no impact on national sovereignty or control over the canal. However, the timing raised serious questions, a U.S. company taking over from a Hong Kong-based operator just as Washington signals its return? Many analysts suspect a coordinated effort between U.S. political influence and private capital to reassert control over this global choke point. Thus far, Beijing has remained quiet, but make no mistake, China is still the second-largest user of the Panama Canal and maintains massive investments in Latin America, spanning infrastructure, mining, and trade. Instead of direct confrontation, China is playing the long game, shifting its strategy towards strengthening ties with regional powerhouses like Brazil, Nicaragua, and Argentina, while diversifying its trade routes, including through the Arctic and Africa. This calculated move aims to reduce reliance on U.S.-controlled waterways and minimize economic exposure to Washington's influence. This isn't a military battle, but it bears all the hallmarks of a modern geopolitical showdown. The U.S. is flexing its economic muscle, using trade leverage, tax policies, and financial investments to regain its foothold. Meanwhile, China is expanding laterally, securing alternate trade pathways to avoid dependence on American-controlled routes. Caught in the middle, Panama is walking a delicate tightrope, trying to balance its relationships with both superpowers while asserting its sovereignty. As global trade patterns continue to shift post-pandemic and new conflicts reshape supply chains, the Panama Canal is once again a flashpoint, a place where the world's two most powerful nations are testing each other's limits without firing a single shot. So what do you think of Trump's aggressive push? Will China retaliate? And what path will Panama choose? Stay tuned. The next developments in this high-stakes battle could reshape global trade forever. While Panama's power struggle unfolds, another geopolitical controversy is making waves. Hundreds of Greenlanders have taken to the streets, protesting against the very idea of becoming part of the United States. Meanwhile, Canada has made its stance crystal clear. It will never become the 51st state. So why is Trump's expansionist vision facing massive resistance? Let's dive in. On March 2nd, large-scale protests erupted outside the U.S. consulate in Greenland. Demonstrators carried banners outright rejecting Trump's claim that Greenlanders wanted to join the U.S. A new survey by the Greenlandic Broadcasting Corporation, KNR, revealed an overwhelming 92% opposition to U.S. annexation, with residents affirming their commitment to staying under Danish sovereignty. This isn't the first time Trump tried to acquire Greenland. Back in 2019, he outrageously proposed that the U.S. buy Greenland from Denmark, justifying it as a strategic necessity against Russia and China. But there was zero evidence to support the claim that Greenlanders actually wanted this.
Donald Trump abruptly and on Twitter canceled a planned state visit to Denmark, apparently because the Danish Prime Minister didn't want to talk about Greenland and selling it to the United States.
Even tweeting, tongue-in-cheek, that if it happened, he wouldn't do this.
Instead, the move was widely seen as a tactical distraction from pressing domestic issues. And guess what? It backfired. It's not just Greenland rejecting Trump, Canada is too. Ontario Premier Doug Ford stated it plainly. Canada is not for sale and will never become part of the United States. And it's easy to see why. Canada is a global leader in healthcare, education, and economic stability. Its universal healthcare system, strict gun control laws, and strong social safety nets set it apart from the United States. Despite their massive $793 billion trade relationship, Canadians are overwhelmingly opposed to a United States merger. In a recent poll by the Angus Reid Institute, 89% of Canadians rejected the idea of joining America. So why did Trump push this idea? Many experts believe it was nothing more than a distraction. At the time of his 2019 Greenland proposal, the United States was struggling with a trade war with China, a volatile stock market, and rising unemployment. What better way to shift the headlines than with a wild claim about expanding the United States? But instead of rallying support, Trump's idea infuriated U.S. allies. Denmark called it absurd, and Canadian officials slammed it as delusional. This isn't just about Greenland and Canada. It's about America's global influence. Trump's expansionist vision has repeatedly faced rejection, raising questions about whether these moves strengthen or weaken the United States on the world stage. One thing is clear, the backlash is real and the fallout is far from over. Stay with us, because what's coming next will leave you speechless. Over $1.4 trillion vanished from the stock market in mere hours, not because of war or crisis, but because of one shocking statement from Donald Trump. What did he say? Find out in our next report. For more insights on the happenings in the political world and globally, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to our channel. Greenland's strategic importance has come under the spotlight following a surprise announcement from Donald Trump, who revealed that the United States already maintains a military presence there and might increase troop numbers. This declaration immediately raised fears of a new Arctic conflict, given the region's growing geopolitical significance. We've got a couple of bases in Greenland already, and perhaps more soldiers will be stationed there, Trump said, sparking widespread concern. Markets responded dramatically. The Dow Jones dropped 540 points, and the S&P 500 edged toward correction territory, as investors feared the economic ramifications of another military buildup. The timing couldn't be worse, as the U.S. economy faces inflation, supply chain disruptions, and global instability. Trump didn't stop at increasing military presence. He revived his controversial 2019 proposal to purchase Greenland, even though Denmark previously rejected the idea outright. In a statement that stunned U.S. allies, Trump also suggested that Canada would be better off as an American state, further escalating diplomatic tensions. NATO members, including Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, immediately rebuked the proposal. NATO has no role in supporting such an outrageous plan, Rutte said. Meanwhile, Greenland's response was unequivocal. A recent survey showed that 85% of Greenlanders strongly oppose the idea of becoming part of the U.S. One resident summed up local sentiment. We are not a product for sale. As Wall Street processed the news, the financial fallout worsened. Within hours, the Dow Jones plummeted over 1,400 points, wiping out its gains for the year. Major corporations like Apple, Nvidia, and J.P. Morgan saw sharp declines. The S&P 500 fell below its 200-day moving average, triggering widespread panic selling. Economists are now warning of a potential mild recession by late 2025, prompting speculation that the Federal Reserve may have to cut interest rates sooner than expected to stave off a deeper crisis. In the midst of this turbulence, investors are being advised to exercise caution, holding cash reserves, avoiding tech and finance stocks, and focusing on energy and defense sectors might help weather the uncertainty. Federal Reserve signals on interest rates could also shift market dynamics and provide clues on how to navigate the unfolding crisis. Internationally, tensions continue to rise. China has increased its defense budget by 7.2%, signaling readiness for long-term confrontation if pressured further. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has refused to lift retaliatory tariffs, stating that Canada won't yield to economic pressure, straining U.S.-Canada trade relations to their weakest point in years. Greenland's leadership has also made its position clear, dismissing Trump's renewed annexation hints. Their firm response, "We are not for sale. No one can force us into anything," further highlights the geopolitical missteps of Trump's administration. Domestically, the U.S. economy is teetering on the brink of stagflation, a mix of high inflation and stagnant growth. With gas prices soaring, food costs surging, and the housing market becoming increasingly unaffordable, Americans are struggling to make ends meet. Some major news outlets have even suggested raising chickens at home to combat skyrocketing egg prices, underscoring the dire state of the economy. Yet instead of offering a clear recovery plan, Trump is focused on pushing campaign merchandise. While millions of Americans face financial hardship, Trump's response has been to urge supporters to buy hats, a move that critics see as prioritizing personal gain over addressing the nation's urgent needs. As the U.S. grapples with escalating global tensions, a struggling economy, and mounting political divisions, Trump's latest actions have further complicated an already volatile situation, leaving many questioning the direction of his leadership and its impact on both domestic and international stability. One of the key issues on President Trump's agenda is Panama and its crucial waterway, the Panama Canal, which links the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The new president has repeatedly stated that the United States should reclaim control of the canal. He He even mentioned it during his inauguration, emphasizing, "China is running the Panama Canal and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama. And now we're taking it back." The canal's strategic location makes it an essential global trade route, significantly reducing shipping times. Situated at one of the narrowest points in Central America, the canal was originally constructed by the United States between 1904 and 1914. However, in 1977, then-President Jimmy Carter signed an agreement with Panamanian leader Omar Torrijos, transferring control of the canal to Panama, which officially took over operations in 1999. Since then, Panama has managed the canal independently. Trump's remarks have sparked discontent among many Panamanians. The historic locks of the original U.S.-controlled canal, built in 1914, remain in use today, facilitating the passage of thousands of cargo ships each year and playing a critical role in international trade. After assuming control, Panama made the decision to expand the canal in response to rising global shipping demands. With ships growing in size, an upgrade was necessary to accommodate them. By 2016, the expansion project was completed. For decades, areas surrounding the canal were off-limits to Panamanians without special permits. It was heartbreaking. A deep humiliation, one Panamanian reflected. Standing inside the Canal Administration building today is surreal. It was just a dream before. We weren't even allowed in the canal zone. Under an existing neutrality treaty, the United States has pledged to defend the canal if necessary. However, Trump has now labeled it a vital U.S. asset, a statement that contradicts Panama's constitution and international treaties, which affirm that the canal belongs to and is administered solely by Panama. The Panama Canal charges passage fees based on a vessel's size and function rather than its country of origin. However, Trump argues that these fees are excessively high. Despite Panama ranking second globally in ship registration tonnage, all vessels, whether American, Russian, or Chinese, are subject to the same regulations. Panama generates significant revenue from the canal, earning nearly $2.5 billion last year. The nation has demonstrated its ability to manage the canal independently, proving that it can not only operate the original structure, but also fund and construct a major expansion. Today, that expansion generates 55% of the canal's total income, surpassing the revenue from the original U.S.-built canal. "We financed it ourselves, using revenue from the canal and responsible financial management," a Panamanian official stated. By law, the canal remains a state-owned enterprise and only Panamanians are permitted to operate it. Beyond President Trump's rhetoric on reclaiming the Panama Canal, there's the broader issue of geopolitical competition with China, particularly as Chinese businesses continue expanding into Latin America. Trump has raised concerns that China wields excessive influence over the canal. However, China counters that it is merely one of many international clients utilizing the waterway. That said, there are ports on both ends of the canal controlled by a Hong Kong-based family business. China is resisting a major business deal that would shift more control of Panama Canal operations to American interests. China is running the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and now we're taking it back, President Donald Trump declared. In March, Trump celebrated a $19 billion agreement involving American investment giant BlackRock, which secured a deal to acquire a significant portion of CK Hutchison's port operations. The Hong Kong-based conglomerate agreed to sell a major share of its port assets, including strategic ports at both ends of the Panama Canal, to BlackRock. Today, a large American company announced they are buying both ports around the Panama Canal and several other key assets related to it, along with some additional canal operations, Trump stated. However, across the Pacific, resistance to the deal is intensifying. Concerns over the transaction are gaining traction, with Chinese officials taking a firm stance. On Tuesday, Hong Kong leader John Lee joined the growing chorus of opposition from China. Meanwhile, Bloomberg reports that Chinese authorities have launched an investigation into the CK Hutchison sale, citing sources familiar with the matter. The probe reportedly aims to assess the deal for potential security risks and antitrust violations. China had already expressed strong disapproval of the agreement, warning that it would undermine its influence over critical global shipping routes. Last week, Ta Kung Pao, a Hong Kong newspaper affiliated with the Chinese government, published an article condemning the sale. That piece was later republished on a Chinese government agency's website overseeing Hong Kong policy. The article claimed that if the deal goes through, the United States will undoubtedly exploit it for political purposes, using it to advance its own geopolitical agenda. This would inevitably place China's shipping and trade under U.S. influence. Since taking office, Trump has repeatedly raised concerns over U.S. control of the Panama Canal, calling it a vital American asset. The Panama Canal was built by Americans, for Americans, not for others. Others may use it, but it was constructed at tremendous cost, in both blood and treasure. Over 38,000 workers lost their lives building it, Trump has emphasized. The BlackRock acquisition gained momentum after reports surfaced that CEO Larry Fink personally reached out to President Trump to pitch the idea. However, as news of China's investigation spread, CK Hutchison's stock plunged by 5%.